Welcome to the Lift Your Story podcast with guest Emma BF, leadership coach and speaker for women in tech.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lori Ann. I am that gal from Milton, Ontario, Canada, and I'm with.
I am that guy. I am Roy Miller from Dallas, Texas. Welcome to our Lift Your Story podcast.
In this episode, we have Emma BF, and she is a leadership coach and speaker for women in tech. Thank you so much for being here today.
Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so Emma, you're a technology person. I want to kind of go to the middle and then work backwards and forwards. So you're a technology person. You were in leadership, 25 years old, the only woman, right?
Yep.
You would go to meetings, not say a word because you didn't think you knew enough or people would respect what you had to say.
So many different meeting experiences, I'll say. What I found most often when I was in this leadership role, as you said, as the only woman and junior by like 20 years, right, in the nonprofit space at the time, in a technology role, the meetings I would walk into, I actually remember my first senior leadership meeting, and it was the first time I was on the other side of the doors, right? I had been seeing these leadership meetings happen. I'm like, what goes on in those meetings? And it was my first time in the meeting. And I was like, here I am, let's go, ready to really to do the work, do the strategy work, really get things done. And I remember the first meeting, we spent the entire time creating a project tracker in Excel for the CEO. And I was like, okay, not what I thought we talked about in this room. But that was actually a really important meeting in my journey because I realized all of these stories I made up about, why leadership was going to be hard and intense and really just I made it was these are humans in a room talking about things that are top of mind for them. Okay, this feels less scary. So actually, Roy, what happened for me in my meetings as a senior leader was actually learning that those meetings didn't need to be so scary and that I could show up as myself and share what was top of mind for me. And if I got pushback, I got pushback. But it was that first meeting that really just brought down all the walls. It was like the Wizard of Oz. The drape came down. Okay, cool. We're just in Excel making a project tracker. Okay, I think I'm good.
Okay, so going from there, you get sent to a 2-day boot camp, leadership boot camp, right?
Yeah.
And so you're all worried that, oh my gosh, $350. There's a lot of pressure here for me. I've got to get my $350 worth, right?
Yeah.
But in that experience, right? So that was your whole total shift in your beliefs. So the reason I bring up the $350 is because a lot of people they think paying for coaching, paying for help, personal development, why should I spend the money? And we talk to so many people that are coaches, and they started out, well, I wasn't sure if I needed coaching, then once I got it, it made such a huge impact, cut down the learning curve, gave me accountability, all the stuff that goes with it. So they, as you said in your bio, you invested in yourself and it paid off. And that was your total mindset shift, right?
Yeah. It was a total flip. I felt like I was an hourglass and I was just like, that's cool. Just keep doing what I'm doing. And especially in the nonprofit space and even in tech, where there's a lot of money in tech, but not often are people investing in professional development for themselves. And so what I hear and what I experienced was I was reading all the leadership books. I was listening to all the podcasts. I was on YouTube as much as I could. but I wasn't actually getting the chance to practice these skills outside of my work. And you're right, Roy. I mean, $350 at that time felt like, why would I spend that much money on myself? But how funny is that, I wasn't even willing to take that chance on myself. And really it came down to questioning my own self-worth. And when I went into the boot camp, it was 3 days long. It was all women in Washington, D.C. And from the moment I stepped into that room, I was like, oh my God, these women are going to change my life. And I'm a little scared. Like, I think there's something that happens when you say yes to yourself. And I experience this even now, even when I level up my own personal growth and development. I'm like, something is going to change. I don't know what it is. I'm equal parts excited and scared. But now I know that that's the intersection I'm looking for. I'm like, what excites me and scares me? Because it means I'm in that growth zone. And again, for me, it comes to practice. Like, where's my practice arena? And that's what I hear I mainly work with women in tech. And that's what they say, they're burnt out in their jobs. They don't feel like they're heard or respected, and they don't feel like they belong in a very male-dominated industry and very, very intense teams. And so to have a place where they can come and just practice being themselves, it's such a novelty, and it is just creating massive results in their life.
It's crazy. We'll spend money on everything else but ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? And then once we do spend money on ourselves, look at the changes we get.
Yeah. And I think there's this fear of growth, and there's this fear of change.
Well, change is a 4-letter word.
Oh, fear. Yeah.
So everybody's afraid. They want to change, but they're afraid to change.
So what does it look like to have that support around you to grow and to change, so that you don't feel alone in that process? Because we're evolutionary creatures. I mean, we're social beings, even the introverts out there. I work with a lot of introverts, and they surprise themselves with how much they want community and how valuable it is. So even just putting a price and investing in that can be a mindset shift.
It was interesting. You were making the comment about women in tech in a male-dominated type business and all. Well, I was in construction, and there was a lot of women architects. There's a lot of women engineers, project managers, estimators, and so. And I know it's because I talked to one, and she's at our own construction company, and she said, "Oh my gosh, when I worked for so and so when I was estimator, I get these guys. Oh, honey, you know what you're talking about. Let me talk to a real estimator and all this stuff, and the women I were around that were in those positions, they were very intelligent, and a lot of them had got to the point where they didn't take any crap off of these other guys." They try to put them down because they were women. They'll tell you right quick, I'm a licensed professional architect. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, you go and try and find someone better.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been involved in that same arena, so to speak.
Yeah.
But not as a woman, of course, but seen it.
Yeah. It's funny how they say, there's somewhat of a shift, but like I was in the automotive industry, which is male dominated as well. It is changing as well. And at one point we had like all women in the service department, which was kind of funny because it's unusual. But we had, you wouldn't have thought, but yes, and this is just a couple of years ago, this gentleman who refused to speak to a woman and wanted to speak to a guy about his car. And he was adamant about it. So we had to get one of the techs from the back to come up and speak to him. Because and I thought, wow. And he was a young man. I mean, you think maybe generationally that would be something, right? That still carried through, makes sense. But this gentleman was young and yeah, refused it. We all sort of looked at each other going, "You're kidding me, right?" It's like, yeah.
Well, in today's times, that's hard to believe.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
it happens every single day. And, of course you can get to the point where, and I got to this point where, similar to what you're saying, we're like, I didn't take any of that. And yet I couldn't deny that on a subconscious, unconscious level, like I was still hearing those things. And that's, the women I work with who, are mid-level careers. So they're stepping into a director role. They're people managers. I mean, they are in levels of power and position within technology, and they're still undoing all of these things that they have been told their whole life. And if you're a woman, it's one thing. If you're a Black woman, if you're a Latina woman, if you're trans, if you're disabled, like any of these intersections, there are so many things that people keep telling you over time. And like, there are so many unintended consequences from that. And so that's the other piece of this work that I do with my women, and what we're doing in community is like creating that space to like shed it. It's like snake skin coming out of it. You gotta like have those tools, have those support to leave that behind you. Because otherwise, even if up here, that they're not true, if you've heard it over and over and over again, it is deep seated. But that's the power of this work, is like, you feel free. When I felt free of all of those things I had been told, because I used to be told that I was too much, that I had like too much energy. I actually was told I was too fun. And I was like, cool. Didn't know there was an upper limit to fun. But I mean, again, like unconsciously, I started to dim my light, and I wouldn't always speak up, or I wouldn't always have as much fun, because I remember that one person, I don't even remember who told me that, but it was something that stuck with me because it was probably one of my fears. And they were mirroring that back to me.
And that's the sad thing is it just takes that one. So there could be like 20 people in a room and 19 of them just love your sense of humor and your funness. And that one person says you're too fun. And that's what you're going to walk away with, which is really sad. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many meetings I was in, and there was always that person that wanted to be the smartest person in the room. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
and it's kind of hard to sit there and see them, going through their stuff, and I'm thinking, oh, really? You got to be kidding me, But in their mind, they're a legend in their own mind. And I worked with a guy, and he told me when he first started, he says he was an estimator. He goes, yeah, I went to this meeting, and man, they were asking questions. I was telling them all this and this, man. Oh, I know this. I know this. Oh yeah. And he said the guy he was with didn't say anything. So after the meeting, they walked out, and he goes, son, let me give you some advice. He said, it's better to sit in a meeting and be quiet and let people think you're stupid than open your mouth and prove it.
That's good.
And he said, oh my God. And he said, I've never forgot that. And he said, thinking back on that, he goes, I can see exactly what he's talking about. He said, man, I wanted them to know I knew my stuff. I was smart. I had all the answers. And he said, looking back on it, I really didn't. So he always, that was his thing. Anybody knew, he would take and say, look, let me tell you this little story. When we get in this meeting, remember this little saying.
Makes sense.
But speaking up is one thing, having your voice heard, your opinion, but you kind of got to keep it in bounds.
Can you tell me more?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like when I would go in meetings and, say the issue was the general contractor we were working for, they were the hold up the progress meeting. But in the meeting, I couldn't say, well, if these guys had their stuff done, we'd be done. You couldn't say that. You say, well, okay, we're going to work on that. We're going to do, we're going to do the best we can. We'll get some more people, whatever. Instead of automatically saying, well, this architect screwed up the drawing. And I've seen people actually do that in meetings.
Oh, yeah.
they'll blame somebody else.
Oh.
And, and I would always go in meeting, I'll say, listen, Emma, we've got an issue. We'll bring it up offline after the meeting, but I'm not going to bring it up in the meeting. If I get asked about it, I'm just going to say we're working on it or whatever, but we have an issue. Okay, well, yeah, fine. But I never would just I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that touches on a key piece of leadership that I had to learn in my own life as well, where I think early on, when I didn't feel like I was heard in the meeting, my initial reaction was to get defensive and to shift into blame and shame. And I remember at one place I worked with, I felt like I wasn't heard or respected by the leader. And I snapped and I would get snippy and I would have those moments. And it wasn't until someone actually gave me the feedback that was what happened, was I even aware of it. And so feedback is such a key piece to my leadership. It's such a key piece to what I feel like is missing in the workplace, what I feel like is missing in relationships, is a way to give and receive feedback in a way that doesn't spark defensiveness and doesn't spark anger. And I work with one guy who's a senior developer, super smart engineer. Like, he would be the person who speaks in the room and is always right. Even like, he's not even trying, he's just that smart. And we have had to learn how to give each other feedback without each of us getting defensive. And it actually took a super uncomfortable, courageous conversation where, like, I cried, he cried, because we really got beneath the surface and we realized how much we had hurt each other. Like, unintentionally struck a chord. Like, I felt like I was being attacked. He felt like he wasn't loved. Like, it was really deep-seated stuff. But I believe that that's what all of these arguments that we have is about. It's about this very deep-seated hurt or belief that you're not loved or belief that you're not good enough. And that manifests into like a meeting like you're talking about, where people are talking over each other. Or, I mean, you'll see in the news, even just in the last few weeks, large tech companies, including Google and Facebook, there's this mass exodus of employees. And they're saying that the cultures are toxic because people are not being held accountable, because there isn't a way to actually give feedback and be heard and believed for that feedback, especially for women who are saying, I'm being harassed. Like, these are not small allegations. I brought up an issue and it was swept under the rug, or I'm not getting promoted because I'm not following the playbook. So mass scale, how we're treating each other in these one-on-one interactions, like how to actually be connected with each other and forgive one another, like the way that me and this guy and I have been practicing for months. Like, this doesn't just happen. Oh, I forgive you. Oh, I forgive you. Great. We'll never speak of it again. Like, I feel that there's a real solution to a lot of the chaos and disconnection and separateness that we have in our world today from these very, very vulnerable one-on-one relationships. And so that's something that I talk with my women who I'm coaching, who are in my programs, is that, like, we have to release this expectation that we're right all the time.
You mentioned feedback, of course, automatically, I think criticism,
Interesting.
No, but I mean, because you're talking about, well, oh, Emma, I think this, well, you're criticizing me. You know what I mean? That's kind of the natural take.
Yeah.
People, oh, you're being critical. You're
Even
criticizing me.
even if it's something nice. I was showing one of my friends my book that I just got redone. I designed a little character when I was 18, wrote the book and illustrated when I was 22. And I said, well, it's out and it's got my name on the front and I'm all excited. And I said, like, I published it 10 years ago, but my name wasn't on the front. So I redid the cover. And I said, it's not one of my best works. And he said, I don't ever want you to say that again. And I could feel my defenses come up, and he was being nice. He was trying to tell me, don't ever say it's not one of my best works. Present it, be proud of it, and don't put it down. I even became defensive on him saying something nice. Like I could feel my, oh, I did that. And it in a strange way. And I thought, why was I feeling that in that moment when he was being kind? His feedback was kind feedback, and yet you still take it that way. Like the initial quick response. Yeah. Very odd.
Well, because what I'm hearing in your share, Lorianne, is that even in the feedback, your brain said, I should have done it different.
Yeah.
And in and of itself, that's there's that fear of getting it wrong, of not doing it right, and like how interesting. And I mean, what self-awareness on your part to even notice that. And this is what I hear this all the time. Part of what I do is career coaching. So supporting women who are stepping into tech or they're leveling up to their next level. And I just did a full kind of resume review with one of my clients, and she reflected that back to me. She goes, I want to say this out loud. When you give me a suggestion that I know is helpful, I am interpreting it as I should have done it. And why did I not do it earlier? So these are very normal things, but again, what's going on beneath the surface, and we do a lot of practicing in just self-love, which is in tech. Can you imagine me going into a tech company and being like, all we need to do is talk about self-love? Not really, not the go-to solution that tech company.
Gather around the campfire, we're gonna sing Kumbaya.
Yeah. And yet they don't even know that a lot of the work that I do is around that. And then guess what? My women are showing up and leading client projects more effectively. They're managing their teams more effectively. They're being more confident in being out there in the world talking about their company. So there is real ROI happening from the soft skills, from the kumbaya. And it's like, when are we going to allow a new understanding of this so that you, Lorianne, can take that advice or take that feedback and be like, yeah, I am awesome. And I'm going to go tell other people about my book because now my name's on the front of it. Congratulations, by the way. And go get that book.
But I mean, how do your clients react, when you start going into the feedback process? I mean, I would think most of them, they're going to jump to the defensive. Would that be accurate?
Yes. And that's why we actually call it out from the beginning. So you get feedback in every single session. And we talk about this. I want you to notice what defense comes up for you so that you can be aware of it. Because naming it is the first step to taming it. And it is a muscle that gets strengthened over time. So this is why I don't really work with people in one-on-one sessions. Then I'm like, go, bye, you got this, right? I mean, for me, it took a year. It took a year of feedback practice to acknowledge that some feedback was really valuable to me, and that the feedback that doesn't land, that I can let it go. So it's this muscle that my clients strengthen over time. And the other value of it is the reflection piece. Even just asking, how are you noticing this feedback hitting you? Has been really powerful.
Yeah, I can see where that would be. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Because people don't realize it's criticism. That's their, they criticize me.
Automatic defense.
Yeah, I mean, really.
And like I said, even with good stuff, that's a really sad thing. I think I could take, constructive criticism better if it's something bad than it's something good sometimes. It's like, what?
Yeah, and as humans, we expect pain more than we expect pleasure. We've had literally a millennium of practicing pain.
We inflict a lot of pain on ourselves too.
Yeah.
It
From our
may be
responses,
unintentional, but it still happens.
Yeah. That's
100%.
interesting.
So, Emma, how can our listeners reach out to you?
You can find me on my website, which is www.emmabf.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I post weekly leadership tips. You can find me on Instagram. I share a lot of celebrations and wins on Instagram. So if you need a little uplifting dance moment, I'm a dancer, so I love bringing that energy to Instagram. You can just find me at Emma BF.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry, I'm really, really curious though. Would you mind saying your last name? Because I know that you shortened it.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, BF is actually my full name. My full last name is Blocksberg Fire Ovid.
Wow.
And growing up, I had other good friends who were named Emma, so we all needed nicknames. And I used to be a camp counselor, so the kiddos who I worked with loved calling me Emma best friend, or the 7-year-old girls would say Emma boyfriend. That was funny. So.
I love it. There we go. And that's easy for our listeners to remember now. Emma best friend, BF. There you go. Thanks again so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit us at lifterstory.com.